Episode Nagi starts with Nagi being woken by the ringing of an alarm when he is deep in slumber. Rubbing his eyes and sitting up, Nagi surveys his room, then stands up and moves to his plant, Choki. With such prompt action, the spiky leaves poke his finger to wake him up as he says his good morning to them. Now, wide awake, he gets out of bed, retrieves his phone, and starts playing a game. As he enjoys the gameplay, he thinks about how much of an ordeal it has become to get up, but he still has to complete some of his everyday missions. Now it is time to go to school. His stomach rumbles. He is hungry but doesn't feel like eating. Drinking some water, he starts wondering why a human gets hungry. If they didn't, he would not have to eat, and if he didn't have to eat, he, therefore, wouldn't have to brush his teeth. Putting on his jacket, he laments that if it weren't for school, he could spend the whole day gaming. Life appears to be a weight on his shoulders. He says goodbye to his plant and exits the room, walking out onto the street to school. As he is strolling along, a car whizzes by and skids to a stop alongside him. A boy leans out of the car. It's Ryo, a second-year student as well. Ryo cheerfully tells Nagi to hop in, explaining that he came to pick him up. Nagi shrugs his shoulders at this and reminds Ryo that he never asked him himself. Ryo places a hand on Nagi's shoulder and reminds him of a promise to play soccer together. Nagi, slowly going back into his skull, hesitantly accepts the offer. Ryo beams like a kid in candy and proclaims to him that his motto in life is to get everything he wants, proclaiming to Nagi that they are now officially partners. Then suddenly, a strange woman, Baya, who introduces herself as Ryo's servant, bows and appeals for the service in whatever manner, leaving him speechless. In particular, he had to look at her long, witch-like nose. Sitting in the car, Nagi could not bring such a phenomenon to his mind. However, the mental suggestions are crossed by Ryo as he asks him if he lives alone or not. Nagi explains he came to this prep school so that he could be given a good job and live a comfortable life in the future. Ryo further presses, saying that he hears Nagi hates working and is effectively being driven out to fend for himself. Nagi nods in assent, explaining his ideal is to retire early and lead a slow-paced life of ease. Ryo, saying maybe while it would take a guy working in some office until he's 100 years old to save enough for retirement, a stadium champion soccer player would earn billions of dollars a year. Nagi nods his head curiously, asking if that is indeed the case. Is that really right? Ryo nods vigorously and starts humming a tune as he thinks of it. Nagi rolls his eyes and makes another face because, what a hassle, working with people, playing matches, even learning the rules. Ryo is unmoved. He reassures him that everything will be well if he follows his lead. He raises his voice, excited, promising to win the World Cup together. Nagi, ever unwilling, concludes that it must be a tiring dream. Ryo laughs again, saying from now on, Nagi will address him as boss. As they pull into school, Baya tells them that they arrived, and the minute they get out of the car, girls start swarming around Ryo, whom they are also over the top excited to see in that early morning. One of them introduces herself and says she really had a great time at their study session the other day and wonders whether he's free for another one, but this time solely with her. But Ryo, dismissing her, keeps his arm around Nagi, saying that he will be very busy playing soccer since we're going to tour the country and find a manager. The crowd is there staring at Nagi, confused, wondering who this new guy is and why Ryo's so attached to him. Ryo then tells Nagi that the first target is to win the nationals. Curious, Nagi asks Ryo why he's so into soccer. Ryo opens up and shares the story behind this dream of his. His family owns their own corporation, and his parents wish him to take over the company one day. He was given the best possible education and everything in life. Nagi, full of envy, comments that Ryo must have had easy times having everything handed on a platter to him. But Ryo sighs. That is why he resents all this and does not want to settle for a ready-made life. He wanted to carve his own path with his hands, and it was then that he discovered that he loved the World Cup. As Ryo walks in his dream, Nagi silently tries to slip away unnoticed. Ryo catches a glimpse of him and tells him to wait, but Nagi waves weakly goodbye at him, hoping to dissuade Ryo from probing the matter any further. But Ryo is already thinking of what he can say or do to encourage Nagi to continue involvement. Ryo decides to investigate Nagi's life a bit, so he decides that his best bet is to ask others about Nagi. He goes to one boy and tells Ryo that Nagi is called the 1,000 Years Netaro, since he slept through every class. A student quips that Nagi must be an odd one, and most likely spends all his time playing video games and probably has fewer friends than they do. One of the girls, however, whispered that she heard rumors that good things come when you are with him. Meanwhile, Ryo keeps investigating Nagi and also thanking the students for the insight. He confirms that Nagi is always alone, and with that information in hand, resolves to start watching him closely and initiate the next stage of his plan on how to bring Nagi into his dream. As the class starts, Nagi is sitting drowsily in his chair, fast asleep. Later, in the classroom, Ryo is sitting, watching Nagi. He knows that they don't share any other classes than this one, which is why he's got to investigate Nagi right here and now. He looks closely at Nagi, wondering if people like this could sleep all day long. He almost even suspected that Nagi was really dead. But then, in the most odd twist of all, Nagi suddenly stirs awake. Then the teacher calls on Nagi to answer a question. However, as he's been secretly sleeping and eating melon bread, he doesn't know the answer, so he just stands up a bit confused and instead asks the teacher if he's interested in some melon bread. The teacher is obviously unimpressed by this answer and tells Nagi that they should stand there for just a little longer as punishment before Nagi promptly disobediently sinks into the seat again. Ryo watches the scene, silently accusing him of sitting again, and decides that Nagi has neither any motivation in life nor common sense. His investigation is now over, and he only draws a puzzling conclusion. Nagi's moves are incomprehensible. Finally, with school well underway, Ryo comes over to Nagi and invites him to play some soccer. Nagi is astonished at Ryo's persistence and queries Ryo as to why he is being so persistent. With this said, Ryo is convinced that Nagi has some gift, as he remembers that the way Nagi handled his smartphone made him feel goosebumps. Confident that great things await Nagi, Ryo confidently declares that they will become the best soccer players in the world. For Ryo, this is destiny, and therefore should make Nagi proud that someone of his talent chose him. Nagi is irritated by Ryo's optimism and believes him to be a nuisance. He asks if it is because Ryo reads too much manga that he dreams too big. Ryo shrugs off the comment and continues to say without any shame that Nagi should go with him. Nagi refuses to go, asking if there is even a soccer club at their school. Ryo smiles knowingly, saying that such details have already been seen. He takes Nagi to the soccer club, where members truly warmly greet Ryo. Nagi is surprised by this. Ryo explains lightly that it's all about connections, and he made this happen by just using his network. One of the members boasts that if they are able to hold a nationwide tour, they are able to attend parties with idols. For one, in case they win, they can even go to Disneyland with an actress. Nagi now begins to realize that everything is because of the force of Ryo's corporation. Ryo calls the team on his way to them and tells them that they are presently top 8 in the regional qualifiers, but it's already near the end of their advance, and it's only important they should all try going for nationals with him and Nagi on board. The team responds with cheers of hope and determination. Suddenly, a club member rushes breathlessly into the room and excitedly declares that they have just received an application for a practice match. The team falls with the jaws dropped, asking who the challenger is. The member responds by saying that it is a famous team that regularly contests at the national level. This news will create waves of anxiety among the group, asking themselves how it comes that a school like Aomori Prefectural High School would come to challenge them. The answer, however, comes readily. It's all because of Ryo. With that revelation, the club members are mumbling over it when Baya, the servant of Ryo, enters the room to deliver a message from Ryo's father. The note declares that since Ryo is his son, it only makes sense that he is destined to win. It is framed as a present aimed at assisting Ryo in achieving his aim of becoming the soccer champion. Ryo reads the note and sucks in air hungrily, fist clenched in frustration. He realizes that his father is trying to play a trick on him, forcing him to the corner so that he will surrender. Ryo understands this gift as nothing but another attempt to control his destiny, only in order to make sure Ryo bends at the will of his father. Still, Ryo's resolve hardens. He knows the dream he has found in soccer and in the World Cup is the first treasure he's ever found alone, and he decides no one, not his father, will ever take that away from him. He says that he will make every effort to obtain it, but not only that, he is willing to bet everything he has on it. He takes Nagi by his shoulder and says that this is the debut match of their dreams, and with fiery eyes, he looks into Nagi's eyes as he asks Nagi to grant him his talent. Nagi is a bit taken off guard because he points out how Ryo grabbing his shoulder hurts, but for some reason he refuses to let go. Anyway, after that, we fast forward a bit as we go to the day of the practice match, where the players suddenly hear the door open up, and then right in there, a furious squad sent by Aomori Soccer Club came walking onto the pitch. One player, called Namioka Ryo, asked their coach why they were being forced to play against these weaklings, but he just told him that it was adult stuff and that last night was incredible. His assistant quickly notes that he definitely was bought off. Ryo is a bit angry that they are being forced to go along with the hobbies of the rich. But he still walks over to Ryo, determined as he tells him right to his face that he will shatter this naive rich kid's fantasies into tiny pieces in no time. And then out of nowhere he says, "Nice to meet you," to Ryo. However, Ryo just tells them to shut up. He starts tying his hair back and says that they are the naive ones and calls them soccer meatheads. He continues and tells them not to talk about him at their insignificant caliber, which really gets them upset. But Ryo doesn't stop there, as he tells them that they still have no clue who the real genius is. After that, everyone from Aomori starts to laugh at Ryo. Ryo, while laughing, asks if Ryo is referring to himself, saying that it's funny hearing this greenhouse-bred kid speak with that spoon-fed self-confidence, and also saying that he has decided that he will crush Ryo with everything that he's got. Ryo just coldly tells him to try it, but also reminds him that the genius he was talking about wasn't Ryo himself, but that it's all of them. Ryo just chuckles as he says, whatever. After that, the referee tells everyone to get onto the practice field as the match is just about to start, which it does, as Aomori gets the kickoff. Ryo starts right away to try and break down their team, as he says that the opposing team's style has already been analyzed. Their basic tactic is to get the ball to their striker, Captain Namioka, and use his steel body, unlike any other high school students, in a power duel style to dominate the field, and because of that, they know that they can't stop him one-on-one, so they will instead make a triangle formation to cover his dribbling course. As Ryo sees this, he just laughs and says that Ryo's team plays using their numbers, and as he's trying to keep away another player from the ball, he says that Aomori isn't so naive and that they won't be torn down that easily. And he says that as he passes the ball over to his teammate, who traps it flawlessly, Ryo's team wasn't ready for this, and they start to panic as Aomori just keeps advancing with their passes, as Aomori has successfully broken their triangle strategy. The passes just keep on flooding them, and they say that they can't keep up with Aomori's press. Ryo just starts to laugh again, and tells everyone that they are all a bunch of nobodies, just like their sheltered school, and tells them that it was naive of them to think that they could beat them with just a single strategy. But just as the pass is heading back to Ryo, that's when Ryo sweeps in between them and steals away the ball. He looks Ryo straight into his eyes and says that it's going just as planned. Ryo can't believe it and is in shock, but Ryo continues and says that honestly, it'd be kind of a pain to get past Ryo alone and that it's easier to make use of others for that. Ryo, still in disbelief, wonders if this was what Ryo aimed for the entire time, saying that he assumed the strategy he taught his teammates would be read and then himself cut the pass that came to Ryo. Ryo then actually admits that Ryo is a better player than he gave him credit for and that he didn't believe Ryo to be such a great strategist. But after that, Ryo finally announces to everyone that it's their time to shine as he tells everyone to go. Ryo has the ball and thinks that if they switch up whenever he gets the ball, then both wings run forwards, spread out, and create a wide gap, which would leave the center wide open. And then with that space in the center, Ryo will use it and trade short distance passes to build up momentum with a low chance of losing the ball. The Aomori player screams that they are struggling and that they can't tell whatever the players will pass in or outside, and others are simply having trouble of catching up to the ball. Ryo can't believe this and asks what they are doing while calling them idiots and tells them to sandwich Ryo, which is exactly what they try to do. However, I don't know how Ryo manages to do this, but he just completely destroys both of them and even nutmegs. One of them, like this roulette turn, was so incredibly smooth. Ryo's plays leave the Aomori players in shock, especially Ryo, who says that Ryo's is much more than just a defender, as both his dribbles and his game making are first class, which makes Ryo wonder if Ryo is a genius or something. However, he can't let that happen as he tells everyone that they need to get him even if they die in the process. And then we see 3 players of Aomori going to try and stop Ryo, which will be really tough to get behind. However, before we see what actually happens, we get into a quick flashback. Ryo and Nagi have just finished their training, but Ryo tells Nagi to listen carefully, as he has one more rule to tell him. He looks at Nagi and tells him that he needs to be somewhere he can score goals from and wait for Ryo to pass there. Nagi is a bit confused and asks if football isn't a game you play with 11 players, and asks if it's really okay for them to do something so self-centered. Ryo cuts him off before he can finish and ensures him that it's fine, as he is going to prove to the world that Nagi is the best there is, so all Nagi has to do is play football while trusting only in Ryo. And then we get back into the game, where we see Ryo getting almost shut down by 3 players, but we also see Nagi on the right side as he sprints up. They make eye contact, and Ryo calls him a good boy, while Nagi just calls him boss. Anyway, with Nagi there, Ryo finds an opening between 2 of the guys to send away an amazing crossover to Nagi. The precision was perfect, and it was like Ryo was threading a needle. Anyway, Ryo looks at Nagi with excitement as he tells him to go genius. However, just then, someone else enters the picture again, and it's none other than Ryo, who bashes into Nagi and tells him that he won't let it happen. Ryo looks furious as he admits that they were actually pretty good at getting past their defense. However, he still has his amazing striker sense himself, and with that knowledge, he puts his hand on Nagi's back and kind of turns him around. He laughs and says that Nagi can't make a decent shot without the right positioning, especially if he's even facing away from the goal. He continues and says that it's such a waste of a pass from the genius Ryo, and that it's too bad that Nagi couldn't keep up with his trained body. But inside Nagi's mind, he is confused as he doesn't understand what Ryo is talking about, as he jumps up and with his left leg traps the ball right in the air, basically making a scorpion trap, which is just wild. But if you thought that it was everything, then you are in for a treat as he takes his other foot and leaps with it into the air to the spin around to meet the ball, and making an insane roulette volley, which for your very first game is out of this world. Anyway, Nagi's shot goes into the goal with no questions asked, as the goalkeeper is unable to do anything against it, and with that, they score the first goal, and everyone from their team storms into the pitch to celebrate with the two geniuses. Ryo jumps up on Nagi's shoulders, as someone calls them a pair of abnormal monsters. Anyway, we then get this very cute panel, with Ryo having a big smile while scratching Nagi's hair. However, if we look a bit closer in between some of the players, we can see a familiar face, and it's none other than Taeri Anri, who's making a phone call. She says that she came to observe the match for Aomori, but on the opposing team, she found an extraordinary pair. She says that one of them has the dexterity to go above the average in every role, which of course is Ryo, and then one with superhuman trapping ability and an incredible shot, which of course was Nagi. She then tells Ego that she really wants to invite these two to the Blue Lock project, as the text then says that this is the genius Nagi Seishiro and his story, which he does not know about yet, of earning himself an ego. And then we see the last panel of Ryo and Nagi, where Ryo with big glowing eyes tells Nagi that they will become the top of the world together, but Nagi secretly just thinks to himself how much of a pain this is, the usual Nagi, you know. The monster duo advances at an astonishing speed, their talents making waves and capturing the attention of the massive Blue Lock project. They single-handedly dominate their matches and rapidly gain popularity. One girl mentions that Ryo has been spending a lot of time with that guy lately, to which the other girl agrees, identifying him as Nagi. A third girl explains that they began playing soccer together, which could be the reason behind their closeness. She admits she never expected Ryo, who seems capable of excelling at anything, to become so obsessed with soccer, and reflects that this is what makes it appealing to him. When asked if she's referring to Nagi, she clarifies that she is, in fact, talking about soccer itself. Meanwhile, Ryo brings Nagi the shoes he had mentioned wanting, and while playing his game, Nagi thanks him absent-mindedly. Ryo urges him to take a proper look at the shoes, to which Nagi nonchalantly replies that he is going to die in the game. Ryo, switching gears, asks if Nagi wants any snacks, but Nagi declines, claiming that digestion is too much of a hassle. The two then go cycling together, with Nagi enjoying the sensation of the wind. When they later run laps, Ryo encourages him to do one more, but Nagi collapses, saying he's too exhausted to even walk. Dramatically, he claims that his legs are broken, his cells are dead, and his heart has stopped. Ryo chuckles, calling him a zombie, to which Nagi responds that he is Nagi of the dead. Annoyed but amused, Ryo lifts Nagi onto his back, complimenting him on his hard work for the day. Nagi remarks that Ryo is weird, to which Ryo replies that he doesn't need to be told that. Nagi, somewhat affectionately, admits that hanging out with Ryo doesn't bother him, which makes Ryo laugh. He says he can tolerate Nagi well enough, and that being together is fun, asking Nagi if he's also starting to enjoy himself. Nagi simply replies that he doesn't want to play soccer, but that being with Ryo isn't a hassle, so he doesn't mind. Ryo pushes for more, telling him he should at least say that he's having fun. Nagi, undeterred, insists that he's tired, and it's time to go home. Ryo acknowledges this, but still urges him to do one more lap, to which Nagi protests that he's already done more than usual today, calling it earnest. Ryo agrees, and then confesses that his father has declared he won't acknowledge him unless he leads Japan's national team. That's why, Ryo says, both participating in and winning the nationals are merely stepping stones. He then kicks the ball straight into the goal, declaring that he'll continue winning and ultimately represent Japan in the shortest time possible. Turning to Nagi, he asks him to join him on this journey until they win the World Cup. Nagi, in response, merely states that he's hungry. At that moment, Baya returns, praising Ryo and asking if she could have a word with him. Ryo, curious, asks what it's about. Baya reveals that she has a letter from the football union. Stunned, Ryo listens as Baya explains that there is a chance his father might have thrown the letter away, so she hid it and brought it to him instead. Grateful, Ryo thanks her. Nagi also shows Ryo a letter similar to the one he received, though he admits he hasn't opened it yet. Shocked, Ryo suggests they open their letters together. Upon reading his, Ryo discovers he has been selected for a special training program, leaving him amazed. Nagi, meanwhile, notes that his letter says the same, though it lacks details. Ryo wonders if it's an unexpected call for a Japanese training camp, or perhaps a U-18 delegation summons. Nagi, uninterested, complains that he hates training camps and only wants to play games and take naps. Frustrated, Ryo asks what Nagi is trying to say, insisting that this is a significant opportunity. If they can make an impact there, it would be the fastest route to joining the national team. Nagi, unfazed, asks Baya if she can intervene, but she laughs, saying she cannot. Baya reveals that she has cared for Nagi since he was born and can only respect his will. Nagi decides to leave for the moment and asks Baya for a favor. She inquires what it might be, and Nagi explains that he has a cactus named Choki. If he doesn't return for a while, he asks that she water it for him. Baya agrees to his simple request, understanding its importance. Ryo asks Nagi if he's really keeping a plant, to which Nagi responds that he likes having a companion in his room. He explains that he asked the shopkeeper for the least troublesome plant, and that's how he ended up with Choki. Ryo laughs, but Nagi calmly advises Baya not to overwater the plant, saying she only needs to water it once every 2 to 3 weeks, or essentially, she can just leave it alone. Baya nods, repeating his instructions, then adds with a hint of curiosity, asking if the same could be said about him. Confused, Nagi asks what she means. Baya brushes it off, telling him it's nothing, and he should forget about it, before requesting that Nagi take good care of Ryo for her. Nagi, nonchalant, replies that he'll do whatever works. Ryo then urges him to hurry. They arrive at the location, and Nagi asks if they are job hunting. Ryo scoffs, telling him that they aren't, though he admits that he has no idea what kind of people are inside. With excitement, he adds that he can't wait to kick their asses. Nagi, less enthused, asks what happens if someone better than him is inside, and teaming up with that person would be more advantageous. Ryo assures him that he wouldn't be that heartless, but Nagi simply says that he wouldn't mind if Ryo did. As Ryo opens the door, they are greeted by a room full of people. Ryo is amazed by the sheer number, while Nagi muses that it looks like they're trying to build an army. Ryo recognizes some familiar faces and points them out, explaining that they are from the same generation as many famous high schoolers, though Nagi, uninterested, continues to play his game. Shocked, Ryo tells Nagi to stand up, reminding him that they have a lot of rivals to defeat. At that moment, another familiar face appears, Kira Ryosuke. Ryo is stunned, as Kira is rumored to be part of the Japanese U-18 team. Nagi, however, feels underwhelmed by Japan's so-called jewel, and thinks that Kira is just an average-looking short guy. The person Nagi notices is Isagi Yoichi, the dark-haired man who is the main character of Blue Lock, but he dismisses him just as quickly. Ryo corrects Nagi, pointing out that Kira is the tall, handsome one, not the dark-haired guy, but Nagi remains indifferent. Suddenly, a microphone crackles to life, and the host, Igo Jinpachi, introduces himself. He declares that, based on his judgment and biases, the 300 players in the room are the best strikers under 18 in Japan. Igo reveals that he has been hired to make Japan a World Cup champion. Ryo is taken aback by the boldness of his words. Igo explains that the only thing Japan needs to become the best in the world is the birth of a revolutionary striker, and with these 300 players, he intends to conduct an experiment to create the world's best striker. He then introduces them to the facility built for this very purpose, called Blue Lock. Ryo is left in shock as Igo continues, explaining that from today onward, all of them will be living at Blue Lock, undergoing his special training. They will not be allowed to return home, marking the end of their previous soccer careers. Igo promises that the one who survives and outlasts the other 299 players will become the best striker in the world. With that, he concludes his speech, stating that this is all he has to say. Fired up, Ryo enthusiastically tells Nagi that they will become the best in the world. However, Nagi, uninterested, declares that he's going home. He points out that being 1 out of 300 is too tough, and he lacks the motivation, calling the task impossible for him. Ryo, taken aback, tells him to wait and argues that the two of them can do it. They should at least participate for now. Nagi, confused, reminds him that Ego said they'd be fighting until only one remains, meaning that one day he and Ryo will become enemies. Ryo is shaken by Nagi's words. Ego then speaks again, explaining that if they cannot become the world's top egoist, they cannot become the best striker. He poses one final question, asking them to imagine that they are in the final match of the World Cup with 80,000 spectators watching. The score is 0-0, and it's overtime in the second half. During the very last play, they receive a pass from a teammate. Nagi envisions the scenario as Ego continues, explaining that it's a 1v1 with the goalkeeper, and 6 meters to their right, a teammate is positioned for an almost certain goal if passed to. In such a moment, with all of Japan's expectations resting on them, Ego challenges them to shoot without hesitation. Only those crazy enough to make that selfish decision will be able to proceed. As he finishes speaking, the door behind him opens, and everyone looks amazed as there's smoke coming from the doors. Ego touches his glasses and says that he will say it once more. Soccer is a sport that exists for strikers, and for them all to think of everyone else on the field besides them as their supporting actors. He asks them to discard their common sense, as on the field they are the leading actors. His voice gets more and more intense as he tells them all to take pleasure in their own goals above all else, and for them to live only for that moment, as that's truly what being a striker is about. And after Ego said that Isagi Yoichi was the first one to start sprinting towards the goal, Nagi is in shock when he sees Isagi, whose eyes look hungrier than ever as he runs. Isagi's running creates a chemical reaction that makes everyone start to sprint for the door. Ego starts to smile as he is still standing right by the door and has floods of people running past him. After a while, everyone has entered, or everyone except 2, and those are Ryo and Nagi. Ego asks them what the matter is, and asks them if they aren't coming. They are quiet for a while before Ryo says that they are going, but before he can finish his sentence, Nagi cuts him off and says that he isn't going, as it sounds like a pain. He continues and says that Blue Lock really isn't for him, and that he would probably get bored and want to leave right away. Ryo is shocked as he hears this, but then Ego cuts in as he asks Nagi if he was bored by his explanation earlier. Nagi, with a furious and insane aura, says that he is, as after all, it was easy for him to achieve the winning goal of the World Cup. This sudden ego of Nagi shocks Ryo, as Nagi's eyes are legit glowing with excitement. Ego is quiet for a while before he says that Nagi won't make it. Nagi is confused, but Ego says that Nagi still doesn't understand his own ego. Ego continues and says that there are plenty of self-proclaimed geniuses like Nagi. They all grow up without a fight, and because of that, Ego turns away and says that he isn't interested in self-conscious, overgrown bastards who just want to live without getting hurt, and he tells Nagi to go and live in comfort while he slowly rots away. Nagi just says fine and is about to leave, but that's when Ryo starts to go at it. He screams at Ego that he's got to be kidding and says that Nagi isn't like any of those geniuses out there. He screams again that the two of them can make it. Ego catches Ryo's words and asks him what he means with the two of them, as there can't be two best in the world. Then suddenly, Ryo grabs Nagi's shirt and pulls him close as he tells Ego that he will make Nagi the best striker in the world and declares that it's his ego. Nagi asks him to wait and that he doesn't want to, but Ryo just tells him to shut up and to believe in Ryo. He pulls Nagi romantically close as he tells him that he will make Nagi's life more enthralling than any nap or game. He won't let Nagi feel bored ever. Nagi is still a bit hesitant, but finally says fine. However, he asks Ryo to promise him to stay with Nagi right until the end. Ryo asks if that's Nagi's ego, but he also says that he promises. With that, both of them walk inside Blue Lock, and as the door closes behind them, Ego sits down on the stairs and says that it's time to start the place where football is the hottest in the world. As they all entered the room, Henri welcomed them and informed the group that from that moment on, she would be collecting their phones and wallets. When she reached for Nagi's phone, he hesitated, clearly not ready to part with it. Ryo, noticing this, advised Nagi to give it up, and after a brief pause, Nagi reluctantly complied. Once Henri had taken his phone, Nagi turned to Ryo and asked him what number he had received on the bodysuit given by Henri. Ryo looked down at his shirt, examining the number printed on it, and stated that he had been given the number 250. He added that it seemed like they were supposed to change into the suits in their specific rooms. They made their way down the long corridor. Nagi glanced around, noting how expansive and complex the space seemed. He remarked that the place was massive, resembling a maze, and confessed that it reminded him of the Squid Game. As they walked further, they eventually found room V and entered. Ryo was slightly taken aback when Nagi reiterated that the setup reminded him of Squid Game, to which Ryo agreed. Their conversation was interrupted when a guy approached them with great enthusiasm. He loudly declared that they were the genius combo from a previous game and that it was fate they were together again. The guy ground his teeth in frustration, explaining that his team had lost because they underestimated Nagi and Ryo. He stated that today would be the day they determined who was truly stronger. Nagi, looking puzzled, asked Ryo if he knew who the guy was, to which Ryo casually replied that he had no idea and didn't remember him. This caused the guy to become visibly angry. He yelled at them, insisting that he was the ace of a powerhouse school they had miraculously defeated and that they should make sure to remember him. Nagi, still appearing confused, muttered something about a muddy yucca, which only served to further irritate the guy. Ryo, unfazed by the outburst, greeted the guy and then scanned the room, commenting that it looked like they had split up all 300 strikers into various rooms, which he found a bit confusing. His attention was soon drawn to another guy struggling with his clothing. Ryo pointed out that this guy seemed to be stuck in his shirt. The guy was frantically trying to free himself and shouted for help, complaining that his shirt was defective because it didn't have a hole in his head and he feared he might suffocate. Without hesitation, both Ryo and Nagi rushed to his aid. Ryo helped the guy remove the shirt, while Nagi went a step further and pulled off his pants. After being freed, the guy stood there awkwardly, and Ryo pointed out the obvious, that he had been wearing his pants as a shirt. Nagi agreed, noting that the guy had also been wearing his shirt as pants. The guy looked down at his clothes, finally realizing the mix-up, and sheepishly admitted that he knew it all along. Trying to brush it off, he claimed that it was a good brush-up for his release, though it was clear he was trying to sound more confident than he felt. Ryo, amused by the situation, laughed and teased the guy for trying to use English words but failing miserably. He pointed out that the guy's attempt at speaking English was all over the place. Nagi always bluntly chimed in by calling the guy an idiot, which caused the boy to protest, claiming he wasn't an idiot but rather naturally funny. Another person in the room, equally confused, asked what the guy was even talking about. At that moment, suddenly the TV screen in the room flickered on, immediately grabbing everyone's attention. Igo's face appeared on the screen, his cold, authoritative voice filling the room. He asked if they were all dressed, drawing their focus to him. Igo went on to explain that the people in the room with them were not only their roommates, but also their rivals, meant to push each other to greater heights. He then informed them that he had personally assessed their abilities and ranked them accordingly. Nagi, upon seeing his rank, was shocked at how low it was, while Ryo, less concerned about his own rank, thought about who might have received the highest ranking. Igo continued, explaining that the numbers on their uniforms represented their current ranks. He added that these rankings would change daily, fluctuating based on their performance in both training and games. Igo also warned them that only those who finished in the top 5 would automatically qualify for the upcoming tournament, which would take place in 6 months, the U20 World Cup. He stressed the importance of the tournament, as it would determine who would represent Japan as forwards. His warning was stern and clear, as those who failed at Blue Lock would lose their chance to ever represent Japan. The key to succeeding in this process, he emphasized, was their ego. After a brief pause, Igo announced that they would now begin a small entrance test to measure their aptitude. He then declared that it was time for a game of tag, causing a ripple of confusion and curiosity to spread through the room. Igo explained the rules. The time limit was set at 136 seconds, and whoever was it at the end of that time would be sent home. He further clarified that if they were hit with the ball, they would become it, and whoever was it when the time ran out would lose. Igo also added that they were not allowed to use their hands during the game. As he finished explaining the rules, the door to the room opened and a football rolled inside. The countdown began, and without hesitation, everyone scrambled into position, ready for the challenge ahead. Igo stated that even professional players use tag as part of their warm-up, but this was no ordinary warm-up. He called it an egotism test, something he had devised to determine who truly had the essence of a striker. The players were told to prepare themselves for battle. Meanwhile, in the control room, Igo explained that this wasn't just any game of tag. The clock showed the countdown, and the boys were in shock. They couldn't understand what was happening. To them, the idea of deciding their future through a game of tag seemed insane. They thought the whole thing was absurd, and even Nagi agreed with them. However, Ryo cringed, saying that this was the best opportunity they could ever have. He then pushed his hair back, reminding them that if they managed to make it into the top 5, they would automatically be on the U20 national team. This was the chance of a lifetime. Nagi, not missing the moment, told him that this was great, teasing Ryo about entering his protagonist mode. Suddenly, a guy ran toward them, claiming that the two of them would lose to him and be sent home. All the players dodged away from the football. The boy shouted, declaring that he would focus only on Ryo and Nagi, planning to send one of them home and then crush the other half of the genius combo. As the boy closed in, Ryo laughed while running, daring the boy to try if he could. The boy shot the football directly at Nagi's face, but Nagi dodged it effortlessly. While dodging, Nagi observed the room and noticed that it looked familiar. It had the same dimensions as a penalty area. At first, the other guys seemed confused, but they soon agreed, realizing that the limited time of 136 seconds was a clue. Nagi thought about how, in a 90-minute match, a player typically touches the ball for only about 136 seconds, meaning that any striker who couldn't make an impact within that time wasn't cut out for the job. The other guys were surprised, as they hadn't noticed this detail before, and they marveled at how Ryo and Nagi had figured it all out. Ryo turned to Nagi, telling him they would outlast the others. Nagi half-jokingly asked if losing on purpose was an option, to which Ryo laughed, telling him that it would actually be easier to win against this guy. Nagi, smirking, casually agreed, deciding that in that case, he would just win. The boy, now enraged, charged at them with full force, declaring that they were dead. Nagi, seeing the boy's aggression, suggested he should target someone else, but Ryo couldn't help laughing, telling the boy that if he kept focusing on them, he was only going to self-destruct. The boy ignored them, but then another guy caught everyone's attention with an explosive burst of speed, leaving both Nagi and Ryo in shock. Nagi asked Zantetsu what he was doing, but the guy only responded with a cryptic remark that things were bad for them as he was going to be the one who won. He addressed the audience, stating that if he could steal the ball, he could win since the game would stop when someone else became it. Both Nagi and Ryo were taken aback by his logic. The guy then waved at the monitor, calling out to Ego, asking if he could see him. The other guy, furious, demanded that he give the ball back, reminding everyone that the person who was it at the end of the game would lose. Zantetsu just laughed at him, adjusting his glasses as if everything was under control. He confirmed with the boy that the player who was it had to hit another player with the ball to make them it, and smugly remarked that this was his type of tag. Ryo burst out laughing, praising the guy for being an absolute fool. He commented that the guy was a natural-born idiot, and Nagi couldn't help but agree, adding that the way he tried to sound smart while using complicated words only made him look and talk like a fool. The other players chimed in, all calling him an idiot. Zantetsu, visibly annoyed by the taunting, ran at them, shooting the football while angrily shouting that only idiots called other people idiots. As he targeted them, Ryo told Nagi to start running in a zigzag pattern, suggesting that it would make it harder for their opponent to chase them. Everyone began dodging and avoiding Zantetsu as best they could, and Ryo started feeling the pressure. Zantetsu was surprisingly good at changing directions even while dribbling, and his unpredictability made things tense for Ryo. Zantetsu shot the ball. Ryo was startled, shocked by how the ball curved wickedly. Zantetsu then revealed that he hadn't even been aiming at Ryo in the first place, instead targeting Nagi. When Nagi stood up again, Zantetsu complimented him, when Nagi mentioned that it was a drag to deal with him. He asked Ryo if everyone was fair game. The Namioka, watching the chaos unfold, said that the game was finally getting serious as the timer ticked down. With only a few seconds left, Ego's voice echoed in the room, asking them what they were going to do. He called on the self-proclaimed geniuses to show their true egos. Namioka shouts that only 40 seconds are left. He mocks Nagi, daring him to bring it on. Nagi, with a slight tap, pushes the ball back with his foot, leaving everyone shocked and confused. He then sits down, leaning against the wardrobe, and casually asks Ryo if it can be anyone. Mentioning that he's going to do nothing, Nagi adds that he'll just let the time run out, lose, and go home. Everyone is shocked by his words, asking him what's wrong and stating that he has no motivation. Ryo, angry, yells at Nagi, calling him a bastard and demanding that he fight. Ryo declares that he won't allow Nagi to lose like that. Nagi, unfazed, replies that it's a drag since this is just the first stage, which means it's only going to get harder from here. So he decides to pass. Nagi questions why he should bother doing something so tiresome, calling it stupid and boring, so he quits. Ryo then tells him to shut up, rolling the ball away from Nagi and admitting that he really is a pain. Nagi smirks and says that he knew Ryo was going to say that, leaving the rest to him. Everyone freaks out as Ryo starts running toward them. Ryo thinks that he only has 20 seconds left and can't afford to waste time, so anyone will do. The other boys begin forming a group, and one of them shouts for them to disperse. Ryo's only mission is to hit one person and survive. He makes his final move, launching the ball, but everyone dodges the attack. They laugh, saying he's panicking because he missed the shot. Ryo, undeterred, tells them to shut up, explaining that it's all part of his plan. He ricochets the ball off the wall, gathers them into one group, traps them in a corner, and slams it again. This time, the ball hits one of the guys square on the head. Ryo clenches his teeth, commenting that the guy in front of him is the idiot who fell first. It's Zantetsu. Nagi tells Ryo that it was expected of him, and Ryo laughs. But Zantetsu stands up, noting that there are still 12 seconds left. He starts running, calling them all idiots. Panic sets in, and someone shouts that only 10 seconds remain. They all freak out, thinking one of them will be eliminated. They run for their lives. The glasses guy makes a fake shot, and Ryo can't figure him out. He hasn't shot yet, so what's he planning? He yells that he could just hit someone at random. As the ball heads toward Ryo, he freaks out, thinking he's going to lose. But at the last moment, Nagi steps in and kicks the ball with his leg, telling Ryo that if he gets eliminated, it'll be a problem for him too. At the very last second, Nagi shoots the ball, telling Ryo that they'll continue playing together. It looks like it's headed for Zantetsu, but he dodges in the last second, and the ball instead hits Ryo, which ends up knocking him down. The clock hits the limit. Nagi remarks that it looks like he won't be going home just yet, while Ryo gets eliminated. Everyone is stunned by the two's crazy strategies. As Zantetsu stands up, he insists he's not an idiot. Ryo then jumps onto Nagi's shoulders, cheering and teasing him, asking if Nagi had been trying to lose on purpose. Nagi smirks and asks how Ryo figured it out, explaining that if the glasses guy had dodged, Nagi would have saved Ryo and gotten himself sent home all in one move. Ryo clenches his teeth, telling Nagi that he can't afford to let his guard down around someone as lazy as him. Suddenly, Onri appears on the screen. She calls it a high-level game and compliments Nagi, Ryo, and Zantetsu. Ego, however, interrupts her, asking why she's praising 3 players when only one can become the world's #1 striker. He reminds her that the Blue Lock experiment is designed to create that very thing, the world's best striker. Onri, taken aback, apologizes for her mistake. Ego brushes it off and tells her that this is only the beginning. Today was just the entrance exam, and the true battle for survival starts now. He orders the Blue Lock players to clash and sharpen each other as they fight to survive this hellish environment. Ego explains that through these intense battles, they will forge an ego the likes of which the world has never seen. He promises that from this environment, they will create players capable of bringing forth an egoist who will devour the world. As the rules appeared, Zantetsu remarked that he understood the objective of the first selection: score 10 goals and trade points using the bonus system. He briefly entertained the idea of using a one-day pass to escape, but Ryo quickly dismissed this, telling him he was completely mistaken. Meanwhile, Nagi expressed boredom, asking Ryo if there were any board games, or even a deck of cards to pass the time. His disinterest was evident, but Ryo reminded him that this was just the first selection, suggesting that tougher challenges awaited them. If Ego's plan was to create the world's best striker, they would all inevitably become rivals, but for now, their priority was to survive and advance. Around them, Team Vi members were preparing their beds, readying themselves for the competition. Ryo, seeking to build a team around his playmaking abilities, addressed the group, asking their thoughts on his strategy. One member noted that since they were Team V, stronger teams surely lay ahead. Ryo, relishing the challenge, smirked, noting that this only made things more exciting for him. In contrast, Nagi sat dejectedly, thinking about how he just wanted to lose quickly and return home to play video games. Zantetsu, still enthusiastic, commented that their opponents seemed like they would be a worthy challenge, but the others quickly dismissed his comment, with Ryo even calling him an idiot. Their conversation was interrupted by Ego, who addressed the team to announce that Team X and Team Z had just kicked off their match, and soon it would be time for Team V to face Team Y. Ego stressed that the first selection would determine their fates as strikers. He asked them to consider whether they would prioritize personal goals or the team's success, hinting that this selection process was designed to rebuild their soccer abilities from the ground up. As they prepared for the match, Ryo told Nagi to get ready, but Nagi, still unmotivated, suggested that he play goalkeeper instead. Ryo, growing frustrated, told him to stop being lazy and focus on scoring goals. Nagi, indifferent, pondered how to slack off during the game. Once the game started, Ryo took control of the ball, determined to demonstrate his strength. He quickly analyzed Team Y's strategy, confident in his ability to exploit their weaknesses. However, before he could act, one of his own teammates suddenly charged forward, shoving him aside. Ryo, taken aback, questioned the players' actions as they were on the same team. The teammate, smirking, explained that the top scorer would survive regardless of the team's victory. He had no interest in the team's success and was focused solely on proving himself as the strongest striker. Another player soon joined the fray, asserting that he too was determined to be the best. They began competing fiercely, paying no attention to the team's overall performance. Ryo, initially shocked, soon realized the reasoning behind Ego's second rule for the first selection. The rule was designed to push each player to focus selfishly on their own goals, forcing them to compete against one another in a test of individual strength. Teamwork was cast aside as their egos clashed, each player desperate to outshine the others. Ryo marveled at Ego's twisted approach, recognizing the brilliance behind it. He couldn't help but smile, thinking to himself that while it was a brutal setup, it was going to be a fascinating and intense challenge. Ego had successfully made the players forget about teamwork and pollution, instead pitting them against each other to test who among them was the strongest individually. Ryo couldn't help but smile, realizing just how twisted this approach was. He never thought Blue Lock would be this much fun, with everyone fighting each other. As the game progressed, a player from Team Y named Nico took control of the ball. He expressed his disdain for the rough play, quickly assessing the situation. Ryo realized that Nico had deliberately positioned himself away from the crowd to capitalize on loose balls. However, Ryo was still able to come in and sweep away the ball from Nico. However, Zantetsu then intervened, stealing the ball away from Ryo and asking if he would still call him that. Ryo was shocked by Zantetsu's speed. Zantetsu, confident, declared that he wasn't foolish and aimed the ball toward the goal. The goalkeeper made an effort to stop it but failed, allowing Team 5 to score their first point. Team Y was thrown into chaos, panicking and fighting among themselves as Zantetsu basked in his success. Ryo, feeling a surge of anger, clenched his fists and confronted Zantetsu, questioning who he thought he was messing with. Zantetsu taunted him, and when Ryo urged him to keep talking, he remarked that he was like a moth flying through the air. While Zantetsu and Ryo were arguing, Nagi went over to the goalkeeper and asked him to switch places as he wanted to chill. But as they resumed their positions, both teams began fighting among themselves, each player determined to score. Ryo realized that this chaos was inevitable and decided that instead of trying to stop it, he would take advantage of the scrum. He prepared to break past everyone and score for himself. Just then, Nico approached Ryo, acknowledging his impressive balance of physical and technical ability, but pushing him aside while calling him a goody-goody. Ryo countered, insisting that the other player knew nothing about him. As they grappled, Zantetsu interrupted them again, apologizing for the disturbance. Nico confirmed that Zantetsu used the right words, but reminded him he was in their way. As they clashed, Ryo seized the opportunity and managed to score, shouting that he was a super elite and telling the others to remember that. He taunted them as lowly peasants. Zantetsu sat bewildered, unable to grasp Ryo's words, stating he would need to Google them later. Meanwhile, Nico observed the speed of the players, realizing that Ryo and Zantetsu were on a different level entirely, representing the caliber of egoist strikers. Ryo continued to mock Zantetsu for claiming to be the strongest, but Zantetsu ignored him, still confused by Ryo's vocabulary. Nico felt the pressure building as he realized his usual strategies were ineffective against these two. He acknowledged that this was what ego meant when he spoke of players capable of creating something from nothing. Faced with the impossibility of scoring against Ryo and Zantetsu, he decided to focus on stopping them, using his eyes and brain to crush their momentum. Before he could act, however, Team V scored again. Ryo celebrated loudly, thrilled to have scored a hat trick, and asked Zantetsu if he was satisfied yet. Zantetsu reminded him the game wasn't over and there was still unfinished business. Frustrated, Ryo told him to leave him alone since he had no time to waste, wanting to team up with Nagi instead. He noticed Nagi slacking off, lounging on the goal net, and asked when he had become a goalkeeper. Nagi, enjoying his rest, claimed they had already won and congratulated Ryo. Ryo sighed, realizing that if he was the only one scoring, there was no point in their efforts. Even if they advanced to the next stage, there was a good chance Nagi would be eliminated if he didn't improve and prove his worth. Determined to motivate him, Ryo had an idea and asked Nagi if he wanted his phone back. Nagi eagerly replied that he did. Eager to play games, Ryo proposed a deal. If Nagi could score 3 goals, he could use those goals to get his phone back. Nagi agreed but suggested they trade his 3 goals for the phone. Ryo angrily retorted that he wouldn't do that and insisted Nagi needed to earn it himself, questioning his ego. Nagi found the whole concept of ego annoying, but reiterated his desire to play video games. He then asked Ryo if he could slack off after scoring the 3 goals, to which Ryo begrudgingly agreed. With that, both players prepared themselves to chase the ball. Meanwhile, the opposing team was preparing their next move, with one player calling his teammates to position themselves, declaring that they were total noobs. They aimed to execute a perfect attack through coordinated passing. Okawa, one of the players, announced that he would confront them head-on. As he charged toward Ryo, however, he was unable to do anything against Ryo. Ryo sees Nagi up on the field and says that he is fine with doing all of the groundwork and helping change Nagi's 0 into a 1. He claimed that this was how they would become the best players in the world. Nagi focused intently on scoring, determined to complete his mission. Nico realized he couldn't let Nagi score and vowed to catch up. But Nagi, immersed in thoughts of video games and his 3-goal target, executed a flawless bicycle kick. The crowd gasped in awe at his skill, labeling him as the friggin' cheat code. As he fell to the ground, Ryo cheered for him, calling him an ultra genius, and helped him up, reminding him they only had 2 goals left to score. Nagi requested a moment to rest, but Ryo wouldn't allow it. On the other side, Nico watched in disbelief as he felt hopeless against them. As the game continues, Team Vi leads with a score of 7, while Team Y remains at 0. Nagi is continuously making goals, astonishing everyone, including Henri, who watches in awe as he effortlessly scores 3 goals in just 10 minutes. His sense of finding the net seems to operate at a genius level. Observing this, Ego instructs Henri to take note of Nagi's accomplishments, explaining that for geniuses, it's often necessary to dangle the right bait to unlock their full potential. By taking advantage of the goal bonus system, Nagi quickly redeems his 3 goals to regain access to his phone. Back in his room, he becomes absorbed in his video games, which he finds endlessly enjoyable and entertaining. Meanwhile, Ryo is growing increasingly frustrated as he lies on the uncomfortable futon provided to them. He complains that if bed quality were rated like goods, these futons would receive an F-tier rating, fitting more corpses than living people. Feeling the futon's discomfort, Ryo calls out to Nagi and suggests that, since Nagi helped him get his phone back, perhaps he could help him secure the high-quality bed bonus next. Still preoccupied with his phone, Nagi dismisses the idea as a hassle, saying it would be much easier for Ryo just to ask Baya to help. Ryo points out that she isn't around, leaving everyone in the room puzzled, wondering who this mysterious Baya is. After a while, all the players make their way to the Blue Lock cafeteria, where meals are distributed according to each player's ranking. Ryo, being a cunning strategist, sees an opportunity to improve his meal. He stands up on his chair and announces to the group that he's willing to trade his hamburger meal. He invites anyone interested to raise their hands, sparking a chaotic reaction as players begin shouting for a chance to make the trade. One player offers to trade his hijiki for half of Ryo's hamburger, but others quickly mock him, pointing out that nobody would accept such a terrible offer. Ryo agrees internally, recognizing that the hijiki trade wouldn't be worthwhile. Thinking quickly, he decides to adjust his offer, offering 1/5 of his hamburger instead. The other player accepts this final offer, leaving the entire room in shock that Ryo actually managed to make the trade. Ryo proudly declares that from now on, the player's nickname will be Hijiki. Smiling to himself, Ryo reflects that this type of economic maneuvering and bartering skill is something he's honed through his experiences with his corporation. He believes that employing this type of strategic communication will help ease some of the envy that lower-ranked players feel toward those above them in the rankings. Ryo's efforts don't stop there. He continues to barter, offering additional portions of his hamburger, each time creating a bidding frenzy among his teammates. As Ryo watches players scramble to trade their meals for a small piece of his hamburger, he reflects on the social hierarchy at play within Blue Lock, knowing that his skill in negotiation not only improves his situation, but also establishes his influence over others. He again stands, mentioning that a lot of hamburgers are still left, and everyone again shouts for that, ready to trade their whole meals with it. On the other hand, Nagi is busy playing his game, thinking that they have a crazy appetite and are going nuts. As he looks at Zantetsu, he mentions that Ryo's crazy tricks wouldn't work on him when Ryo mentions that he might also want to join the negotiation, as he will be already tired of his yakisoba by now. Zantetsu did not give importance to him, mentioning that his taunts were meaningless, as they were really delicious. Ryo gets angry, mentioning that in that case, he also doesn't care, as he only likes cool and interesting guys anyway, and he doesn't give a damn about a stubborn idiot like him, especially if they were going to ignore his benevolence. Zantetsu shouts at him, asking him what benevolence even means. to which Ryo mentions that it is the reason that he is an idiot. Calling him an idiot again and again makes Zantetsu angry, shouting at Ryo not to call him an idiot and asking him what that word means. Nagi on the other side is being tensed by their fighting, thinking of running away and going to the bathroom to take a bath. He is using his low-effort body washing technique to wash his body to make bubbles over his entire body at once and wash them away in one go, and then he is finished. He didn't think that even though it's a pain to wash his body, soaking in the bath is great. He then thinks that Ryo has already made everyone on the team loyal to him, but according to him, he was like that. Even in high school, popular guys are amazing at being able to manipulate everyone like that, but it seems like they will win even if he doesn't do anything, so maybe he will be able to avoid playing any football and he will play a bunch more video games. He is excited about it when suddenly someone jumps in the tub, brushing his teeth. As he looks at him, he is Zantetsu, as he is dripping the water from his mouth. Nagi is getting frustrated, asking him not to brush his teeth in the bathtub as it is gross. As Zantetsu looks at him, he apologizes, mentioning that it's his family's motto that even if they forget about everything else, they will never forget to brush their teeth. This motto surprised Nagi a lot, as he mentioned that his family might be pretty smart. Zantetsu tells him that it's because his whole family is a dentist, and other than him, his entire family is smart. Nagi questions if his family constantly calls him an idiot for not being smart, to which Zantetsu replies that it's not the case, as truly intelligent people have the grace to not call an idiot an idiot. Nagi didn't like his way of asking him not to make such weird idioms with such a straightforward face when Zantetsu told him that they were his own words. But like he said, the people around him all treated him like an idiot, and he didn't get it. He hated being treated like an idiot, so he avoided public transportation. Instead, he ran. At some point, he realized that he was especially fast, so he decided to devote himself to sports. According to Nagi, it looks like a dramatic story, but he couldn't understand what made him choose football, to which he replies that it's his intuition. Nagi thinks that he is really an idiot. When Zantetsu further mentioned that he is going to give all his effort to soccer and become a pro, and become the #1 striker, and become the world's most esteemed moron, and that's actually his dream. His words were like Nagi mentioning that it's a pretty cool idea. Zantetsu asks him why he is playing football, to which Nagi replies that it's more like Ryo's fault. According to him, all he is doing is tagging along, and he doesn't have a dream or anything like that. Zantetsu asks him what's so great about Ryo, to which Nagi mentions that he wonders. Maybe it's because it's the first time someone has ever been interested in a slacker like him. Zantetsu tells him that he is really a weirdo, and Nagi agrees with him as he gets this comment a lot further, mentioning that he doesn't seem like a bad guy. After that, Team V gathers in the room, and Ryo tells them in the next game they're facing Team V. Like them, they also won their first game. The core of their team is the Wanima brothers, and if they can stop these two, they will definitely win. And they will set up an offense with them at the center, just like they train and position themselves to split up the two brothers. So their ultimate goal is to get high-quality beds for everyone. He shouts to motivate everyone to win the game. Nagi is impressed by Ryo, as he is like he has built a cult around himself, as all of them reach the match field. Ryo asks Nagi to continue their hot streak when Nagi mentions that since his whole team is united, he doesn't need him anymore. Ryo smirks, mentioning that it's not allowed and he needs to fight, and Nagi agrees with him. As the game continues and they kick off the ball, the main goal of Ryo is to crush one of the brothers completely, so they will pick one and focus on shopping him, and it's to steal the ball and target the younger brother, thinking that he will shut down the younger brother himself, while everyone else works together to shut down the older brother. And if everyone goes according to the plan, it will be a piece of cake for him. But he freaks out as everyone gets wrong, and Team W comes to stop him. They block him when one of the boys mentions that he was the replay of his last match and figures out that his team is going to revolve around him. And if they stop him from leading Team V, deformation will become stagnant, and at the same time, their explosive combination attack will rip their defense to shreds. He smirks, mentioning that it's what his older brother ordered him. Ryo is freaking out as they're playing pretty well, and the Ryo team is not able to stop them. Nagi is impressed by their playing skills, telling Ryo that these two are pretty sick. After that, they make the first goal, and they are ecstatic about it. Ryo thinks that they won't beat the team if they play like usual, so at this rate, they are going to lose, and they need to start playing as a team too. But Zantetsu refused, and mentioned that he was not going to do that, which sounded like a pain to Nagi also. Ryo then smirks, asking them to do as he says. As Ryo's plan begins to fall apart, Team W effectively seals him off and starts shutting down his team. Realizing that if things continue this way, they'll lose the neat combo, Nagi asks Ryo why they need to win so badly. Couldn't they just afford to lose one game? But Ryo disagrees, saying that the two of them have to continue their legacy as the strongest. Nagi questions if Ryo isn't being too inflexible as he tries to gain control of the ball, only to be quickly covered by Team W. Ryo realizes that, as expected, they're marking him relentlessly. If Team W is going to close off all paths to Nagi, he'll have to use his surroundings to connect with him. Nagi catches on to Ryo's plan, thinking it's a good idea. However, things don't go as Ryo hoped. Instead, Nagi passes the ball to Zantetsu. Surprised, Zantetsu asks why Nagi gave him this treasure. Nagi simply replies that it's a pleasure and tells him to go for it, calling him Mr. Dentist. Zantetsu accepts the challenge and takes off with the ball, with Team W players chasing after him but unable to keep up with his speed. However, one of the Wanema brothers blocks him in the middle, causing Zantetsu to panic. He attempts a shot, and Team W yells for their goalkeeper to stop it. Unfortunately, Zantetsu doesn't make a perfect shot, and he misses the goal. Ryo rushes over to Nagi, demanding to know why he passed the ball to that idiot instead of to him. Nagi explains that Zantetsu said he wants to be the #1 striker and has the same dream, so he figured he'd let him try scoring while he slacks off. Ryo cringes, wondering why he would share his dream with a four-eyed dumbass. Zantetsu retorts that it's his dream too and refuses to back down. Nagi, looking a bit lost, asks Ryo why he's so set on this, adding that Ryo is actually really talented. Zantetsu admits that Nagi is right about Ryo's talent, but insists that he can't stand his attitude. As Ryo tries to argue, Nagi steps between them, suggesting it's a waste to argue, especially when Ryo has acknowledged Zantetsu's speed. Ryo sighs, finally admitting that Zantetsu is indeed faster than him. Deciding to cooperate, Ryo tells the others that he'll share what he's observed to help them win, urging them to listen up. Though Zantetsu grumbles in disagreement, Nagi encourages him to go along with it. Ryo then mentions that his real weapons are his extreme acceleration, explosive speed, and his powerful left-footed curving shot. And if he had to go towards the goal from the right and shoot, he would curve in an angle that the goalkeeper couldn't touch. But if he shot from the left side as he did just now, it would become a very effective middle-range shot. The angle increases the chance of the goalkeeper reaching the ball, cutting its effectiveness in half, asking him to aim from the right, and if he has to get a good feel for what range and angles, he will make his weapon more powerful. Zantetsu is still angry, mentioning that you won't listen to someone who calls him an idiot, and even his words are boring. This angers up Ryo, and mentions that it's the reason he doesn't like to fight with such a person as he is really an idiot, when Nagi tells them not to fight, as they will really make a good pair. Ryo tells Nagi that if he doesn't agree, in the end, they will have to do it with just the two of them. Ryo then thinks that with Nagi trapping, he can envision all sorts of goals, and the hardest one is the one that no one can touch, the one where Nagi shines the brightest, so he will make it happen and win. But as he shoots, 3 guys were covering Nagi, making it difficult for him. But Nagi didn't take it, mentioning that it's Zantetsu's range is further, mentioning that rather than using his head, he is better at running, asking him if he isn't, asking him to do what Ryo said and use his super acceleration. The team shouts, asking his members to stop him, but this time Zantetsu agrees, mentioning that if Nagi says that he will listen, I'll shoot that curve at an angle the goalkeeper can't reach, and it will make his weapon even more powerful. Ryo is shocked as he agrees to his observation, and in the end, after all, Zantetsu makes the goal. Everyone is so happy praising Zantetsu for it, when Zantetsu runs towards Ryo, asking him to tell him more. Ryo is shocked when Zantetsu mentions that he wants to win, so how can he make his microwave go? Ryo smiles, mentioning that he finally decided to listen, when Zantetsu tells him that he still doesn't like him, but he has come to like his wisdom, so he should use his dumbass in his plans. Ryo smirks, mentioning that it's okay, as it's a win-win relationship. Nagi, looking at them, wondered, why can't he just say thanks? Ryo then tells Zantetsu what their next strategy is, and as both of them start gossiping, Nagi mentions that it looks like they feel good about the relationship. On the other side, the brothers are boiling up with anger when one of the brothers mentions that the real game starts now, and Ryo replies to him that it's him at the start of his crushing defeat. In the end, Ryo and Zantetsu got the brother by pressing in sequence, to which Ryo smiles, thinking that with his speed, defending is a piece of cake for them, so now they should push forward towards their range. Everyone shouts to block this route and cut off his shot. Zantetsu remembers that Ryo told him that when enemies enter his range, he should not rely on his feet, and go on in alone and send it to Nagi. Nagi taps the ball without dropping speed and without giving them any time to think and present the offering to the king. And as they decide in the end, Ryo makes the goal. Nagi asks Ryo how many goals they need, as now the three of them have made a high-level triangle, which is freaking the two brothers out. Moreover, by putting their complete faith in those three, the rest of the team is falling behind their lead, and he can't believe such a perfect team was only just formed in Blue Lock. Even though they crushed the Ryo-Nagi duo, all the work of Zantetsu is paying off over here, and Nagi is also feeling happy, as there is someone who says he is cool, and someone who understands his real strength. So now Blue Lock have become an interesting thing for Nagi. The brothers shout at them, asking them how long they think they will be fooled by their old trick. But as Nagi got the ball, he thought that Blue Lock was still a pain in his ass, and he easily made the goal, and the team won the game. As they win the game, all of them are dancing and jumping in their elite beds, and as Zantetsu also jumps in to enjoy the bed. Nagi notices that he is not wearing his glasses, asking him if he can see without them. Zantetsu upside down tells him that they're just fake glasses, asking him if the goggles during the match are fake too. To which Zantetsu replies that he wears them to look smarter. Ryo mentions that he is a fucking idiot. When one of the guys from the team calls three of them, asking them about the meeting as he has summarized the data on their next opponent's Team X, and their ace is this guy, Baru Shuei. His weapons are his exceptionally charged dribble and long-range middle shoot when Ryo asks them not to worry, mentioning that the three of them are undefeatable and they are peerless. He starts shouting, asking everyone to win. Nagi, lying down, thinks that now he doesn't need to work hard, and now as both teams reach the ground, Ryo asks them to quickly wrap up this game with a win when Zantetsu mentions that they're peerless, and Nagi agrees with him as Baru shoots the ball off. Zantetsu gets the idea that he tends to act on his own, so with both his physique and speed, he grabs his body, thinking not to think too much, and just gets in his way, but he can't stop him as he is so powerful and has crazy charging power. Ryo runs towards Zantetsu, saying good work to him. Ryo takes the ball and asks Baru if he really thought that he could defeat all of them by himself. The ball goes over to Nagi. Ryo asks him to pass it to him, and as the ball reaches Ryo, he shoots the ball right into the goal. The Baru team gets angry at him, asking him how stubborn he is going to be and how much longer he will drag them down, as if he doesn't help them win, they will be eliminated. The team further requests him to be united like others, asking him to strengthen the team. However, Baru then looks furious and asks them if they think that he would give a fuck about some lowly peasants like them, as why should a king like him take care of his servant corpses, further mentioning that they all had no issues leeching off his talent when the going was smooth. But now that the ship looks like it's about to sink, it's suddenly the king's fault? According to him, they don't deserve to be called humans, as they have come this far because of him. Everyone was angry at him, and some even started crying. After that, Zantetsu mentioned what a tyrant Baru is, and said that he is glad that he isn't on Baru's team. Ryo chuckles, mentioning that it's egoists like him who will survive in Blue Lock. And according to Nagi, this guy looks like another pain in the ass as the game restarts. Team X mentions that they will win against this team without Baru. Nagi and Ryo are confused, as they had started working together, but according to Ryo, it's still an easy win for him, as even if they are working together, it's just a bunch of nobodies. On the other hand, they have the three of them make up the core of their team, and their bond is not so weak that they will lose to some spur of the movement, and the second goal is made up by Zantetsu, and the third one by Nagi, while Team X is still on 0, and now it's become impossible for them to win the game, and while they were at their end, Baru asked them not to give up as long as there is a sliver of hope they shall fight on, but Ryo stopped him, mentioning that you can't create something out of nothing. He passed the ball to Nagi, mentioning that it was a bonus time so he should get his deluxe bed too, but it still looked like a pain for Nagi. However, Baru came in between, mentioning that he has some nerve, calling him a lowly peasant. Ryo apologized to Nagi for being careless, but Nagi asked the king Baru to give the ball back, but the king didn't agree, mentioning that he is just a slave who can't even do anything without being ordered to. Nagi tries to take the ball away from Baru, but he sweeps past Nagi, which shocks him. Ryo is also shocked by Baru's move. However, he knows that he has Zantetsu beside him, so it will still be an easy win for them. So he decides to first make Baru slow down, then Zantetsu will press him, but Baru accelerated, which was the thing he was aiming for when they switched their positions. Ryo is freaking out, as even though he let his guard down, only someone with solid insight and soccer IQ could have seen that blind spot. So this guy is not just another selfish player, and he is a rare talent who lives for the sake of the goal, and when he stands out, He is an existence that easy to destroy. But when left unmarked, he begins to shine talented lies, invade in the shadows. He shouts at him, telling him that he is not a king, and that he is just a goddamn joker. Baru scores the first goal for Team X, and looks furious at Ryo, as he asks him if he still thinks that it's an easy win, and calls him a fucking peasant. Nagi tells him that he is not a slave or a peasant, but instead, that he is just Ryo's partner. Nagi tells Baru that he is not a slave, as he is Ryo's partner. Baru responds by asking why Nagi doesn't just scram before he gets his ass kicked, calling him a peace-loving softie. He insists that to be one of the world's best players, it means standing alone as a king, so his buddy-buddy act isn't going to cut it at this level. He is just like a bottom-feeding slave. As Baru stops, Nagi tells him that, to be perfectly honest, he doesn't care a single bit about football. And the reason he got pissed off is that Baru has been talking all kinds of trash and beating up Ryo with his violent methods. Baru gets fired up, asking Nagi if he wants to get beaten up by him. Ryo asks Nagi to stop and calm down, reminding him that they're still winning. He urges Nagi to forget about that good-for-nothing king and show him he is stronger in the second half, asking him to kick off as the game resumes. Ryo thinks that all Nagi has to do is look at him, score just 2 more goals, and get his own high-luxury bed. Nagi takes the ball, telling Ryo that he gets it, and that he just got sidetracked a bit, and that's all. Nagi makes the goal. Baru asks him if he is satisfied after scoring a boring goal like that. Nagi replies that who cares, as a goal is still a goal, and it doesn't matter if it's boring. This causes Baru to think that Nagi is just an idiot with nothing more to offer. As the game restarts, Nagi asks Baru what he means by that, to which Baru replies that all of Nagi's goals are meaningless and that he is just scoring because the purple-haired player over there is controlling him like a slave. Baru pushes him back, telling him to listen up and mentioning that the world's first striker always stands alone as a king. He pushes the other guy down, stating that he would rather die than be someone's slave. After pushing them all back, Baru makes the goal, and now the score of Team X reaches 2. The eyes of Team X sparkle, thinking that they still have a chance to win. If they get the ball to Baru, they can definitely win, when one of the guys mentions that they already tried that, calling him an idiot. He adds that if they do that, the defense is going to key in on Baru, and the game is over. They ask each other what the hell they are going to do, but they have to win, or they are done. They are freaking out due to this. Ryo looks at Nagi, listening to their conversation, asking him not to worry about them, as he thinks Team X is finished. He points out that no matter how strong a player might be, a team with no unity quickly falls apart. He passes the ball to Nagi, asking him to score 1 more goal and end this game once and for all. As the game starts, he calls out to Nagi, who is stunned. It's rare for him to take the initiative. Nagi is running faster, not giving anyone a chance to find him. Ryo cannot understand what he is thinking, as instead of choosing the logical option, why is he electing for a riskier option? Ryo's eyes pop out as he realizes that Nagi is deliberately running after Baru. Baru calls him a bastard when Nagi tells him that the slave is coming through. Ryo shouts at Nagi to show him his real strength and demonstrate how much of a genius he is. Ryo uses a high-speed ground pass. Ryo shouts at him, telling him that the pass is coming. Nagi, staring into Baru's eyes, asks Baru if he still thinks he is boring. Baru gets up, saying that he deliberately went for the back heel to show him up. He tries to push Nagi, but Nagi kinda dodges it. Ryo shouts at him, mentioning that it was a foul and a penalty, but Nagi punches Baru back, saying that he is pathetic for letting a slave get the better of him. He scores from behind Baru, mentioning that he is not a king, but rather a fool. Now the game finishes with Team V scoring 5 points, and the match is closed. Team V becomes excited. Ryo praises Nagi for his goal, saying it was really unexpected from someone like him, and Zantetsu also praises him, saying he is amazing and really skinned Baru for a new one, after that people made fun of him for saying the wrong sentence, calling him stupid. Baru is boiling, telling Nagi that he is just a lazy person and that he has a scary ego. He calls him an egoist, mentioning that the next time they face each other, he will make him his slave. In the cafeteria, Nagi is sitting with his head down, mentioning that he is so tired when Ryo passes him the meat, saying he wants to eat meat, so they use their goal points to get him some. Zantetsu mentions that if he didn't want to eat that, he shouldn't have wasted his points on it. They both start eating together, mentioning that they can't stop because it's delicious. Ryo asks Nagi to eat some, but it feels like such a drag for Nagi. Seriously, he can't understand why he tried so hard against Baru. As Zantetsu eats Nagi's portion, Ryo asks him not to finish it all, as it is all for Nagi, and says that he is serious. Nagi cannot figure out if he acted that way because of anger or ego, but he mentions that who cares, as even thinking is tiresome. Suddenly, a guy approaches the three of them, introducing himself as Kwon from Team Z, and asking if they are interested in making some sort of deal. Zantetsu asks him what he means, and Ryo asks him who the hell he is. Kwon mentions that it's a super great deal for Team V. Zantetsu asks him if it's a win-win, to which he replies that it's really a type of win-win deal. Simply put, he will tell them all of Team Z's strategies and data, while Team V wins via a clean sheet. Nagi cannot understand what is wrong with him, wondering if he is so desperate, or if he really wants to survive in Blue Lock this much. Kwon starts laughing, asking them what they think about his deal, and if they agree to team up with him, but the three of them don't agree. Nagi tells Ryo to finish up this conversation, as even chewing is a pain, so he should carry him. Ryo carries him, mentioning that they brought him here because he wanted to eat. Nagi apologizes, mentioning that it's over now. Zantetsu, on the other hand, is confused as he wants to eat the steak since it looks delicious and will be wasted, but he feels it would be stupid to ask for leftovers. Kwon shouts at them to hear him out. When Nagi asks him why this guy is so desperate, Ryo mentions that he wants to win. Nagi tells him that weak guys who have to try hard to win are such a pain. He would rather just give up, asking Ryo if football is so interesting that he wants to play it so desperately. Suddenly, a guy approaches from behind, asking Nagi not to underestimate football. When Nagi looks at him, he remembers that he is the guy from back then. He then thinks a bit and says that someone who is never alone cannot be labeled a genius. Only when there is something to be found does its outline start to take form. He then introduced himself as Isagi from Team Z, the team that will bring them down. And this is the story of the genius Nagi. As Nagi is busy playing his games, Nagi then thinks that ever since he came to Blue Lock, he has been kind of weird, as he couldn't understand why he tried so hard. It might be because Baru makes fun of him and Ryo, or because Baru just pissed him off, but feels like that doesn't quite explain this feeling. Ryo tells Nagi that this is their last match, as they've won all our matches so far, so they're definitely moving on, but they're still going all out to win this. Zantetsu agrees that they shouldn't let their garden go with the wind, but Ryo shuts him down instantly, as he tells Zantetsu that he wasn't even close to saying the right thing. Nagi thinks that he feels so hazy. Ryo is so excited as this is the time for the first selection's last battle, but it's just a pain, and Zantetsu is hoping not to let his garden go still, not realizing that he is saying it wrong. When Ryo asks him why there are only 10 of them, when Zantetsu mentions that the trader's guy is off in the corner because even if they win, he will still advance as the top scorer, so he is planning to slack off. As Nagi kicks off, Ryo mentions that they would have still won even if they were 11. Nagi is wondering if everybody here likes soccer. After that, Isagi shouts Igarashi's name. Nagi still couldn't understand what soccer was to them. If that dream of theirs was life itself, Team Isagi tried to make a goal, but it didn't work. Ryo thinks that their goal attempt was so interesting asking Nagi to try it, but it still looks like a pain to Nagi. Ryo takes control of the ball and shoots it up on the field. Nagi still in his mind can't understand what soccer is to him, as he doesn't understand if it's just a way to kill time or just going along with what Ryo wants, or if it's just a game. He has no idea. And now he makes the goal look like a piece of cake to him, asking the guy how he had missed something like that. Even thinking about it is such a pain, but he can't help it. Ryo praises Nagi for his skills, mentioning that it's just like he pictured it. Nagi looks at Ryo, asking him if he can slack off, when Ryo asked him not to, and to get 5 more goals first. Nagi asked if 4 would work, but he didn't agree, and 5 more was still a pain for Nagi, asking his team to hurry up and finish the game. Isagi was freaking out when Nagi scored the second goal again. Team Z asked his members to calm down as it was just the start, but Zantetsu did the third one too. All the Team Z members are now totally worn out. Ryo smirks, mentioning that it's all over, as in the end, all the teams were the same. Nagi also thinks to himself that Team Z is just like every other team. However, he still has this hazy feeling to him. Ryo is so happy thinking that they will finish the game, but as the game restarts, Bachira takes over the ball when his team members ask him not to take it all to himself, but he smirks, mentioning that the monster inside him is saying that when things look dire, don't get scared, get excited, in fact. Ryo's eyes pop out to see his determination, as it's a faint spin. As now he reaches Zantetsu, he mentions that there is no way he is letting him leave, but he manages to do it with a mid-air elastico. Nagi was so shocked, thinking about how in the hell Bachira was as he made the goal. He smirks, mentioning that they should look as the things are getting interesting. Nagi looks at them celebrating and wonders if that's what fun is. Ryo mentions that it looks like they're getting kindred spirits, and Zantetsu tells him that it looks like it's not over yet. Ryo later says that it's interesting and that it means that they have to crush them completely. But it's still the pain for Nagi. Nagi looks at Isagi and Bachira and says that to them soccer is fun, but he never thought it was fun. He wonders if Team Z knows what these hazy feelings are, but then he takes a total spin as he wonders why he is getting so heated all of a sudden. Now Team Z gets the ball, trying to score the goal. Isagi shouts at him not to lose nerve. He looks at Kunigami with determination and asks him to fight as he's going to be a superhero. And now that he has done the second goal, Kunigami shouts with happiness. Zantetsu is getting stunned as they're winning even if they have 10 players. Ryo mentions that they're catching up, asking them to give him a break. But Nagi's still confused, trying to figure out the reason they were fighting so hard. As the team takes the ball, a guy shouts at Gagamaru to give him the ball. Nagi still wants to know the egos of all the strikers. Now Isagi took over the ball, and Nagi thinks back to the time when Isagi told him not to look down on soccer. Nagi runs after Isagi, asking him, why don't they just give up gracefully, as those guys are totally different from everyone else they have beaten? And why do they keep trying, asking him if he is stupid, as he just doesn't get it? Saying that if he had Isagi's level of talent, then he would have quit soccer by now, asking him to tell him what the reason is behind it. Isagi asks him to shut up, calling him Sherlock, and mentioning that he is on a roll right now. Nagi couldn't understand him, as he just got mad instead of explaining. He couldn't understand what's his deal now. Chigiri from Team Z gets the ball from Isagi. Zantetsu runs after him to catch up with the ball, but he loses at top speed, which makes Nagi more stunned. And then Team Z makes their third goal, and after they start shouting with happiness. And now both teams have the same score. Team Z's Quan shouts at Team V that what are they doing as they should get it together, calling them idiots, asking them if they were not embarrassed to be losing to a team that is short of a player, calling them dumbasses. Nagi thinks that Ryo is getting worried, thinking if he, Zantetsu and Ryo are going to lose. As the game restarts, Reichi asks Ryo if he is really that scared of losing, calling him an undefeatable, sheltered dweeb. Reichi clenches his teeth, mentioning that he is going to provide him with his first loss. Ryo is freaking out. Nagi thinks that even though Ryo looks like something is wrong, Nagi decides to ask Ryo to give the ball to him. Ryo looks at him with shock, and then Nagi takes it. He thinks that he is actually trying again, even though it's a pain. He tells Ryo that he is going to give it a try, and he runs towards the goal. And now his body is moving faster than he thinks, and his spirit is accelerating faster than his body, and he wants to verify this curiosity. Team Z shouts to block the attack, but it's too late as the ball goes straight to Nagi. Nagi thinks that he wanted to prove himself with soccer, and after that, he did his spectacular and mind-blowing goal. He falls down, thinking that he's getting so heated, and he feels a bit better. After that, he calls Ryo, mentioning that soccer is fun, and he stands up. As of now, the score of Team Vi is 4, and that of Team Z is 3. Team V is shouting and praising Nagi as they take the lead again. Zantetsu hugs him, calling him a genius and fantastic, to which Nagi mentions that it was a nice pass and agrees it's correct. Nagi then asks Ryo how many more points they need, who looks at him in shock. On the other side, Team Z is freaking out, mentioning that if they don't take the lead in the next 15 minutes, they have screwed up, so they should attack until they die. A man known as Reichi is holding Isagi by the collar, while Zantetsu looks at them, mentioning they're not out yet. Ryo tells Nagi to get one more point, saying that if the score gets one more point, they will win. Nagi still cannot understand why everyone is getting so heated, thinking that it's such a pain, so he agrees with Ryo's instincts. As the game starts again, Zantetsu tells the guy that this time he will stop him, but Chigiri calls him stupid Four Eyes. Nagi looks at him, thinking that the redhead is planning to rush in again, so in that case, he will go to the point where he will pass Zantetsu and stop him. He goes further, telling him that he will take this, calling him princess. However, out of nowhere someone else comes by. It's Isagi who tells Nagi that he is too naive. Chigiri calls Isagi a good boy and mentions that he will give Isagi a pat on the head later, but as he goes to shoot the ball, it hits the post. Ryo gets hope as he couldn't make the goal, but the ball later falls to Kunigami, who was standing a bit away. The ball falls perfectly, and Kunigami does his own wave attack, which flawlessly goes into the goal. They shout in happiness as the score is now equal. Nagi is still standing confused as he witnesses the heat from them fighting with all they have. Team Z shouts to get one more goal. They know they are going to win as the game restarts. Nagi thinks that he has no idea that this kind of world existed, and if he scored a goal amidst this fanaticism, how good it would feel. He wonders as Zantetsu gets the ball. Chigiri shouts, mentioning that he is not going to let him past, but Zantetsu mentions that it's too bad, as right now they have an eager prodigy on their side. Nagi says good to Zantetsu, and now Isagi is running after Nagi. It's again a pain for Nagi as he is waiting for the moment to trap it. He could not guess if he should go right or left or if he was planning to defend based on a split-second judgment. He could not understand if he should do it, so in the end, he felt that he would improvise his response and do the trap with his back. He freaks out as he actually grabbed it with his back. Team Z shouts at Isagi to stop him, but Nagi is feeling surprised, thinking that he is amazing and he didn't know he could do this stuff. This feels incredible to him, but to his surprise, Kwon grabs his face, causing Nagi to fall and commit a foul for malicious interference with a scoring opportunity. Kwon gets a red card, and now he is out of the game. Nagi asks him what he is doing. Ryo shouts, asking Nagi if he is okay. He runs towards Kwon, asking him what his problem is when Zantetsu asks him to stop, warning that he will be out too if he gets a yellow card again. Nagi tells Ryo that he is actually fine. He says that he was pretty amazing before that, and never imagined anything like that. It just keeps rushing out of him. Soccer is something he has never seen this side of himself before. Now he is changing. It feels weird, but it's fun as he wonders what kind of him is waiting ahead of here. Ryo asks Nagi if he is hurt, and now he just wants his own goal. Team V gets a free kick. Team Z asks their members to form a wall a little more to the right. They have got to stop them as this is do or die, and they should watch out for Nagi. Nagi is waiting for Ryo to pass the ball to him, but Ryo decides to shoot for the goal on his own, but ultimately misses. Nagi freaks out, as he cannot guess that in the end, Ryo is playing for himself too. Zantetsu shouts, stating that now it's his territory, and he shoots the ball, but Team Z has made a wall. Nagi gets the ball, hoping for 1 point. He tries to make the goal, and as he shoots, thinking he has won, but not yet. Gagamaru in the absolute last second manages to come in and stop the ball. Nagi freaks out, as he could not guess this could happen. Isagi is looking, seeing that it's their last chance. Team V tries to stop him as he is making a counter. Bachira has the ball and sees Isagi in the goal zone, and he sends over a pass to Isagi. As Isagi sees this, he calls Bachira the best. However, Nagi comes by his side and tells Isagi not to think that Nagi is letting him go, and tells Isagi that right now he is the most dangerous one on this field. Nagi thinks that Isagi will touch the ball first, but before he shoots, he always has to grab the ball to position it in a favorable spot. So he will steal it when Isagi does that, and then once again, he will counter him and end this with his own goal, asking Isagi now to bring it on. He thinks of soccer in this heat, knowing he can't be beaten as he will swallow Isagi as a whole. But before he can even try and take the ball from Isagi, he actually shoots the ball right as it comes to him, which is something that he usually doesn't do. However, in this insane moment, the shot from Isagi goes into the goal. In that moment, Nagi definitely sees it, a shining light, and a moment when a person is reborn. He freaks out, picks up the ball, and asks Ryo if there is still time, and if they can score 2 more points, they can win. Ryo is shocked to see Nagi in this condition, but before he could do something, the game is over and Team Z wins the game. Nagi's eyes pop out. It's over, and this feverishly hot time is ending. He might have been able to be reborn too, but the reason that got Nagi so heated was the thought of his own goal. But now everything has been stolen away by Isagi. Nagi calls Ryo, thinking that losing after giving his all is something which he has never felt before, but now that he knows how it feels, he says that it feels so frustrating.